Hey everyone! Maria Elena, Pope Francis's sister, has just unleashed explosive revelations that are sending shockwaves around the globe. Jorge, the true force behind the Vatican's aura, steps forward, revealing intense childhood struggles and long-buried wounds. Prepare to discover a side of Francis that will leave you speechless. A stunning revelation. Maria Elena, Pope Francis's sister, shatters the walls of secrecy, unveiling tales that demolish everything you thought you knew about Jorge. From his bright childhood moments to the hidden, painful recesses of his soul, an unfiltered, unexpected Francis emerges, ready to leave you utterly astonished. Are you feeling the shock? Maria Elena's revelations about Pope Francis are flipping the script like never before. If you're blown away by this jaw-dropping truth, drop a number 1 in the comments to show your amazement. If you're not convinced, leave a number 0. Be sure to like, share, and spread the word, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next shocking secrets. On April 21, 2025, Easter Monday, the Vatican made the heartbreaking announcement that Pope Francis had passed away at Casa Santa Marta. While his death had been expected after months of declining health, it still sent shockwaves around the world, not just for the loss of a beloved figure, but for the profound secrets it revealed. Amid the global mourning, there was one woman, far from the spotlight of Rome, who felt an intensely personal grief. That woman was Maria Elena Bergoglio, Pope Francis's only surviving sibling. She wasn't a public figure, nor a theologian, just a modest homemaker, leading a quiet life in Buenos Aires. Yet her words shattered the silence, resonating like a crack in an immaculate glass. I watched him step onto that balcony and felt like I might collapse. I started crying and couldn't stop. That moment was simply too much, she shared. The first time Jorge Mario Bergoglio emerged as Pope in 2013 was more than a fleeting memory. It ignited a series of questions that even now few have dared to confront. Public records confirm that Maria Elena was born in 1948, 12 years younger than Jorge. They were raised together in Buenos Aires in a traditional Italian household, her father a railway worker, her mother a devoted homemaker. She recalled her brother as someone who was firm but fair, even in his youth, someone who always seemed destined for a different path. He had no love for large crowds, avoided displays of wealth, and frequently ventured alone into impoverished neighborhoods just to lend a hand. While some reports suggest the siblings shared a close childhood bond, that connection began to fade as Jorge entered the Jesuit order and quickly rose through its ranks. By the age of 36, Jorge had risen to become the provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina, a position fraught with challenges, especially amid the tense atmosphere of military rule. His growing involvement in strict religious circles raised concerns within the family, yet, according to Argentine sources, Maria Elena never wavered in her belief in him. He wasn't perfect, but he always followed his conscience, she remarked in a rare interview with a local outlet. However, once he ascended to the papacy, the rift between them deepened, not just geographically but structurally. Vatican protocols strictly limited the visibility of papal relatives, further widening the gap between the siblings. Maria Elena, frail and battling illness, lived a quiet life in a convent, cared for by nuns, gradually fading from the public eye. When the Pope passed away, she was unable to make the journey to Rome. No final goodbye, no last touch, no seat at the funeral, and not even her name spoken in the farewell. A few reporters questioned, why didn't the Vatican arrange for his last surviving relative to be there? But their inquiries were met with silence. One theory persists. Did she remain in the shadows all those years out of respect for his sacred office, only to refuse the silence from overshadowing their shared truth once he was gone? Off-the-record whispers suggest that she was urged to remain quiet, to avoid tarnishing the Pope's legacy. There were no grand speeches, no scandals, just the quiet, undeniable truth that before he became a religious icon, she knew the man behind the title. What Maria Elena remembered didn't always align with the public image. Have we truly understood Pope Francis? Or have we only seen the version the Vatican chose to present? This question gives Maria Elena's story weight, urging us to reflect on the real man behind the papal facade. Explosive revelations. Maria Elena, Pope Francis's sister, steps forward with shocking truths about Jorge that leave the world in disbelief. Childhood memories and hidden struggles reveal an entirely different Francis. If you believe this is the truth, comment. Number 2. If you're skeptical, drop a number 5. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe now. If there was one thing that truly set Jorge Mario Bergoglio apart from his predecessors, it was his origins. He wasn't born into noble European bloodlines, nor did he grow up within the sacred walls of Rome's ancient church. He wasn't dressed in vestments as a child. Instead, his roots ran deep in the vibrant heart of Buenos Aires, where the blaring horns, late-night cafes, and the scent of working-class sweat defined the pulse of Argentina. He belonged to the streets long before he ever belonged to the church. As his sister Maria Elena once said, "It was in that raw, unruly world that the soul known to millions as Francis was forged, not through rituals, but through hardship, pressure, and quiet, resolute decisions." Jorge, the eldest of 5 children in a family of Italian immigrants, was born in 1936. As a teenager, he threw himself into his studies and took on various jobs to help support his family. One of his roles was working in a chemistry lab, followed by a stint as a security guard at a bar. A seemingly insignificant detail, but one he openly confirmed in a 2013 interview. "Yes, I was a nightclub bouncer. It taught me how to handle people." However, everything changed when he was in his early 20s. Jorge fell seriously ill with a lung condition, requiring surgery to remove part of his lung, and he spent months recovering in the hospital. While no one can say for certain what transformed within him during that life-threatening experience a year later, he enrolled at Villa Devoto Seminary, marking the beginning of a journey that would ultimately shape his destiny. In 1969, Jorge was officially ordained into the Jesuit priesthood, but his path would not follow the traditional route of most priests. By the age of 36, just 4 years later, he was appointed provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina, a position of immense responsibility, especially during the politically turbulent years that lay ahead. Then came the darkest chapter that would forever cast a shadow over his legacy: Argentina's brutal military dictatorship from 1976 to 1983. During this time, 2 Jesuits, Orlando Yorio and Francisco Jalitz, were abducted and tortured by the military junta. Questions swirled. Why didn't Jorge intervene? Had he made a deal with those in power? Speculation ran wild from all sides. Some claimed he lacked the courage to protect his fellow clergy, while critics in the press accused him of remaining silent to avoid personal risk. Yet others, including key witnesses, maintained that Jorge had secretly worked to save lives, perhaps even rescuing the priests themselves, though not without them enduring significant suffering. From the family's perspective, Maria Elena firmly rejected these doubts. In a rare interview, she spoke out, saying, "We were never fascists. We were as terrified as everyone else. Jorge did everything he could to save people. He wasn't after power." Despite the controversies, Jorge remained steadfast. However, after his time as Jesuit provincial came to an end, whispers began circulating that he had generated too much friction within the order. Some depicted him as excessively rigid, demanding strict obedience. The Vatican, perhaps sensing the tension, reassigned him to Germany and later to teaching positions at Argentine universities, a subtle form of exile for those who disrupt the status quo. Yet, in the quiet of this period, something profound began to shift within him. He embraced deeper lessons about mercy, simplicity, and the true boundaries of authority in a fractured world. In 1992, he became Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires and soon advanced to Archbishop. He began attracting notice again, not for ambition, but for his humility. He rejected luxury cars, prepared his own meals, and regularly visited the sick and poor, especially AIDS patients, those often overlooked and stigmatized at the time. When the cardinals convened in 2013 to choose Benedict XVI's successor, few expected Jorge to emerge. At 76, he wasn't seen as a frontrunner. But as the church grappled with scandal and spiritual fatigue, they turned to someone different. Jorge Mario Bergoglio was elected. When he stepped onto St. Peter's balcony, a hush fell over the world. Maria Elena remembered that moment. "I had hoped they wouldn't choose him, not because he lacked merit, but because the weight was overwhelming." Many now believe that Jorge's once criticized past uniquely prepared him to lead with humility. He had known failure, confronted the church's deepest wounds, and never claimed perfection. To Maria Elena, that's what kept him her brother. Not a flawless pope, but a man who stumbled, rose, and kept learning how to extend grace. Not a scholar, not a bishop, not a Vatican official, but Maria Elena Bergoglio, a quiet woman in Buenos Aires, living simply among nuns, tending her garden, and praying each day, holds a kind of knowing no one else can: memory. In this story, her memory isn't meant to challenge his image, but to gently return the man in the white cassock to the ground, where family still has the right to grieve, to remember, and to speak. In a rare and candid interview with a local Argentine outlet, Maria Elena voiced what many wouldn't dare to say: "I prayed he wouldn't be chosen, not because he was unworthy, but because the burden is too great." It was a raw, deeply honest confession. As crowds rejoiced and the Vatican hailed its Pope of Mercy far to the south, a sister mourned quietly, not out of pride, but with the painful awareness that from that moment on, her brother no longer belonged solely to their family. Maria Elena once called Jorge her brother and closest companion. They didn't just share childhood. They endured their family's hardest seasons together, illness, loss, and financial hardship. She remembered how he once repaired her broken bicycle by hand, just so they could ride to school side by side. These small, tender memories don't appear in official histories, but for Maria Elena, they're the ones that last. He was goofy, so kind. People see the Pope. I still see the boy who made me laugh when I cried over spilled milk. But time moved them down different paths. Jorge chose the priesthood, a life of discipline, solitude, and service. Maria Elena remained in the ordinary world. And though miles and callings separated them, she never felt truly distant, until 2013 when Jorge became Pope. Everything changed after Jorge became Pope. Their conversations grew infrequent. Phone calls had to go through intermediaries, and letters sometimes vanished into silence. The brother who once never missed a family gathering became a solemn figure on a distant screen. Maria Elena never voiced bitterness, but her words held a quiet sorrow, as if the church had taken part of her and never returned it. Still, Maria Elena never questioned Jorge's convictions. She knew that his mission to serve the poor would draw resistance within the Vatican, but he remained steadfast. He continued visiting prisons, welcoming migrants, and refusing the comforts of the papal residence. He didn't just speak of the poor, he lived among them. Maria Elena recalled how, when urged to move into the apostolic palace, he responded with quiet defiance. "Those walls are too thick. I can't hear the people in there." When asked if it pained her not to be at his side during history-making moments, Maria Elena offered a wistful smile. "He belongs to the world now, not to me. I've accepted that, but I never stopped missing him." It wasn't jealousy, it was a quiet grief that few could truly understand, when the last member of your family becomes a global symbol and your love is left in the shadows. After her story emerged, whispers began to circulate. Had the church, perhaps, intentionally kept his family at a distance to preserve the sanctity of the papal image? Reporters questioned her absence at the funeral, the omission of her name in official statements, and the silence surrounding her request to see his personal belongings. Yet, she remained composed and dignified. No accusations, no resentment, no demands. Her only wish was to speak out, to remind the world that before he donned white, Jorge was a brother, a friend, a man made of flesh and memory. "I don't care if the world knows me, but the world should know him, who he truly was, the barefoot child, the man who wrote letters without fail, the brother I still speak to, even now that he's gone." Perhaps the Vatican will never respond. Perhaps this silence will remain unchanged. Due to her delicate health and the care she received in a modest Argentine convent, Maria Elena couldn't make the journey to Rome. The Vatican made no efforts to arrange transportation for the Pope's only sister, nor did they offer any formal recognition. At least, that's what her silence allowed the world to assume. Soon, global news outlets began to ask uncomfortable questions. Why, with all its resources and influence, didn't the Vatican ensure a proper farewell for his closest family? Was it an unfortunate oversight or a deliberate decision to ensure the Pope's legacy would be seen as universal, not tethered to family? For Maria Elena, her choice to speak out wasn't about demanding recognition. It was about preserving something irreplaceable: the memory of Jorge, unfiltered by protocol, the story she wanted to share with the world before it faded away. Friends revealed that she cried for 3 days straight, repeating one heart-wrenching phrase: "I never got to say goodbye. That's what hurts me most." Never one to seek the public eye, Maria Elena never asked for a role in the church's spotlight. But as a grieving sister, the pain of not being there for her brother's final moments, not by choice but by circumstance, was a loss too profound to articulate. She had once said, in a quiet conversation long ago, "The day he became Pope, we lost him. Jorge ceased to exist. He became Francis, and Francis no longer belonged to us." At the time, her words seemed like a wistful reflection. But after his death, they resonated as a sorrowful truth, that the papal crown came at the cost of every personal bond, even family ties. A few South American reporters suggested that Maria Elena had hoped for a final conversation with her brother as his health deteriorated in April 2025. But according to sources within the Vatican, access to him was strictly controlled, granted only to medical staff and a select few cardinals from his inner circle. The lingering question remains: was there truly no way to arrange one last call, one final exchange of words or images for his sister? Or was it done deliberately to allow the Pope to leave this world as something greater than life itself, untouched by personal ties? Though Maria Elena expressed no bitterness, her face held a sadness that no comfort could assuage. She asked for nothing more, no status, no special treatment, just the preservation of truth, that before he was Francis, he was Jorge, her brother, her family, a son of Argentina, made of heart and flesh. Not seated in the honored chairs of the Basilica, not summoned to speak before the Curia, Maria Elena Bergoglio carried something no one else could: a soul forever intertwined with Jorge, from the days when his name held no fame. In a quiet moment, Maria Elena recalled the last words Jorge shared with her before his election as Pope. "I hope for a church that belongs to the poor and serves the poor." A simple and sincere remark, yet over time, it became the cornerstone of Francis's papacy. For Maria Elena, it wasn't something crafted for headlines. It was a reflection of how he had always lived, from giving his sandwich to a hungry man at their doorstep, to humbly declining a front-row seat at his first meeting as a cardinal. He didn't preach his values, he embodied them. His actions spoke louder than any words ever could. To Maria Elena, Jorge never became a distant pontiff. He remained her big brother, the one with scuffed shoes, a warm, rich voice, and the peculiar habit of neatly stacking old newspapers. He was the brother who was stern enough to ban cartoons after bedtime, yet gentle enough to slip coins into her bag when money was tight. She reflected, "History will remember Pope Francis as the man who redefined the church, the one who challenged tradition, who spoke boldly about migrants, the poor, creation, and grace. But to me, Jorge's greatest gift wasn't in his speeches. It was in the truths he never had to explain. He didn't lead through proclamation. He walked his path quietly, hoping others might follow." Many would later say that through her words, Francis was not seen as a saintly icon, but as a man who held his sister's hand at street crossings, a man who texted just to ask, Did you have something to eat? A man who turned down birthday cakes, knowing the money could be better used for someone sleeping on the streets. For Maria Elena, his legacy doesn't lie in libraries, marble plaques, or medals. It lives in the quiet, humble gestures, the ones he passed on to every family member, and which she, the last of them, still carries deep within. He may have left us, but I recognize him in every quiet act of kindness. That's the legacy he left me. Not the papacy, not the vestments, just love. There are stories you won't find in textbooks, not tucked away in Vatican archives or announced in the solemn press releases of the Holy See. Yet they endure, quietly smoldering like faint echoes from a past long left behind. And every now and then, those echoes resurface through an unexpected voice. The Pope's sister. When Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, passed away on April 21, 2025, the entire church entered a sacred farewell, carried out with the Vatican's impeccable ceremonial grace. World leaders offered their condolences, cardinals gathered beneath the Sistine Chapel's iconic ceiling, and historic moments were broadcast to the world. Yet amid all that grandeur, another silence lingered, one unspoken, unprinted, but deeply felt by many. The Pope's only living sibling, Maria Elena Bergoglio, was not there. Maria Elena's name was never mentioned in the official funeral plans. No Vatican statement addressed her absence, not a single word in the tributes, not even a small bouquet marked "from the family." In that silence, many quietly wondered, does the Pope's family disappear once he ascends to Peter's throne? Then Maria Elena broke that silence in a series of deeply personal interviews. She spoke not as a witness to history, but as a sister grieving the loss of the chance to hold her brother's hand one final time. Through those humble reflections, people began to realize that Francis was more than just the face of the church. He was a man who gave so much to keep that face unblemished. People think he lived in peace, but Jorge carried sorrow, not just for the church, but for his own soul, Maria Elena explained. She had remained silent for years, never wanting to disrupt the reverence the Vatican sought to maintain. But after his death, she felt it was her duty to preserve the humanity the world might forget in their veneration. In the modest convent where she lived alongside aging nuns, there was no Wi-Fi, no television, just a battered radio and weathered Bibles. Her days unfolded in prayer, tending to her flowers and writing memories. She wrote slowly, line by line, recounting stories of Jorge, not for books, not for praise, but so that one day someone might remember that Francis had once simply been Jorge, the eldest son of the Bergoglio family. He carried me when I was sick. That's the Jorge I hold on to, not the Pope in white, but the boy with strong arms and kind eyes, she recalled. Little moments that biographies often overlooked, how he fed sparrows with leftover bread, how he called her Nana, a term of affection in Spanish, formed the foundation of a man who understood mercy, who bowed before the world's pain. What resonated most with people wasn't just how sweet she said he was. It was her honesty in acknowledging that he wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, serious ones, but he always sought to make amends. In a world that demands too much from public figures, That admission struck like a powerful wave. Maria Elena didn't claim he was saintly, nor did she conceal his long silences or moments of hesitation. But she made one thing clear. He chose love every time, even when it hurt. After his death, Maria Elena received letters not from officials, but from ordinary people, from single mothers, from priests exiled by the church, from young people struggling with their faith. They didn't thank her because she was his sister. They thanked her because, through her, Francis became human again. "You returned him to us," one wrote. "You reminded us he was real." While the Vatican remained formal, offering no response to her words, the public reaction grew. Questions began to surface. Why was his only sister absent from his final farewell? Why couldn't the Church's memory of him include a sister's love? Was the Vatican concerned that too much truth might soften the carefully curated image they had built? But Maria Elena wasn't seeking blame. She wanted no apologies, no spotlight. All she held on to was the quiet flame her brother had once lit in her heart, and in the hearts of strangers. He didn't need sainthood. He just needed to be remembered fully, truthfully, as someone who always chose kindness, even when it cost him dearly. Now, each evening, when the chapel bells toll, Maria Elena still lights a single candle beside her window. Not for the Pope, but for Jorge, the brother lost long before the Vatican opened its gates for his final farewell. He died within the Vatican's walls, but his story didn't end there. It lives on in every soul brave enough to see him not as a figurehead, but as a brother. And perhaps, just maybe, that's where true sainthood begins. Not in golden sanctuaries, but in the memories of those who loved someone for exactly who they were. And there you have it, the earth-shattering secrets revealed by Maria Elena about Pope Francis. A raw, emotional side of Jorge that leaves us all speechless. What do you think of this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe for more jaw-dropping truths. See you next time.